Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
Welcome to the Go Use Australia podcast. It's the podcast for Australian shooters who just want the political interference taken out of shooting.
Welcome to another episode of Gun News Australia, brought to you by Politics Reloaded and Gun Traders Australia. And I have again with me Sean Fraser. Sean, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Neil. The quiet before the storm. I've got to do 2 tip runs this morning, so I'm enjoying a coffee before I have to start doing that.
Yeah, you're still recovering from the tropical cyclone, Alfred. So
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, has that stopped you from shooting? Have you been back?
No, they've closed the ranges. This is the second week, so no, the ranges are not open till Monday. So even though it's nice and sunny this morning, the ranges are all still pretty waterlogged. So no, not only did we miss last weekend, we've missed this weekend as well.
Okay. All right. Now, coming up, we're talking today about the Victorian Duck Season, which we're going to do in a second. We're going to cover the results from the Western Australian election. We're going to be talking about the gun rally that was held. I want to cover that, but also, giving credit where credit's due for some of the, I guess, the recognition of the effort that some organisations put into the election, obviously Western Australia. So, you want to kick off with the duck season, Sean?
Yeah, well, today's Sunday, the 16th, but duck season starts in Victoria on Wednesday. The reason why they've made it a Wednesday opening, I think the game authorities' the idea behind it, because it always used to start on a Saturday. The idea was the game authorities figured that protesters wouldn't be out as much on the Wednesday morning. However, that doesn't seem to be the case. So we've been stuck with a Wednesday opening now for a few years, but we're lucky enough to have a season because unlike in Western Australia, Neil, all the shooting organisations in Victoria, Field and Game, SSAA, all the duck associations in Victoria all got together and fought the closing of duck season really well, and they were successful. Unlike our brethren in WA, and you might want to talk about that, Neil.
Yep. And people who want to watch my interview with Danny Ryan from the Victorian Duck Hunters Association on the Victorian Duck Season, the link is in the description to this podcast. So, yes, we'll talk about West Australian results. Now, the results have not been finalised. They're still being counted, but as everybody knows, Labor got back in with another landslide. They had lost some ground. They lost, at this stage, Labor has lost around 18% of the vote. But, of course, they had 50, I think 3 or 4, whatever it was, seats to begin with in the Western Australian Parliament, as opposed to, I think it's 5 for the Liberal. So there's a very high watermark to try to come down from. So it was never going.
They're down to 41 seats, is that right, or 41 or 42?
It's just gone back to 43, as I think some results in some seats start to finalise. But also they're not a coalition, but I'll call them the coalition. The Liberal National Party coalition have also picked up a couple. I think they're in about 8 seats or whatever it is. I'll check that out in a second. But so some of the seats now are being finalised, which is why both sides have gone up. So Labor has 43 seats at the moment. The Liberal National parties have 10. So both sides have improved, but it's still a big margin. And I had previously said that fighting or standing up for shooters was going to be it's going to take more than one election, because we're talking about multi-election strategy here. It's now going to take more than 2 elections, regrettably. Yeah.
How's the Legislative Council looking now? We've got those results up.
The results are still being counted. Basically, we won't have a result for that until probably early April.
The last time I looked, the Labor was on in the Legislative Council, which is what the with WA's upper house. Labor was on 10 seats. Nationals, I believe, was on 5. The Greens, unfortunately, were on 3 seats. There was One Nation on 1 seat, and the Libertarian Party, I believe, Neil, was on 1 seat.
Yeah, looking at the numbers as of yesterday being the 15th of March, the ABC is saying that it's likely to be Labor 15, Liberal 10, Greens 4, National 2, One Nation, and
So the Greens have gone up. Yeah, so the Greens have gone up another 1 in the last few days, obviously.
Yeah, so again, there's been clawing back of results, but just obviously not enough for us. So whilst the headline is bad, okay, it's a bad result for shooters, but we're still interested in looking at what happened because it is clear that it's interesting because in the Northern Territory, this in fact, it might have been last year, I think, Labor got booted out. In Queensland, Labor got booted out. In the ACT, Labor nearly got booted out. They actually lost ground to independents. And I dare say that Labor in Victoria will be probably on the nose too. So clearly there's something wrong in WA.
Yeah, well, Western Australia is obviously the outlier. Whether it's very unusual. Australia-wide, they're bucking the trend to boot Labor governments out.
Yeah. Now, I guess one little bit of good news out of this is it looks like Tom Bruff, the Liberal candidate in Albany, who we've interviewed a couple of times, and he's a shooter, and he's been very vocal on and standing up for shooters. He looks like he's going to win his seat. The votes, I think, 87% counted, and he's currently 52.5% two-party preferred. So he looks like he's going to get that. Hugh Jones, who is the Labor member for Darling Range, who we've played around with a fair bit, he is also returned. However, his primary vote has dropped from 56 to 41%.
Right.
14%. Now, bear in mind, as I said, there was a statewide swing against Labor anyway. So I can't say it's all due to shooters, but it is good news. Again, as we're seeing elsewhere, what Labor loses is not being picked up by the Liberal national parties. It's actually being partially picked up, about half the votes being picked up, and the rest is going to small parties. So it really reflects on the Liberal Party, I'm afraid.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yep.
Not that, just to make clear, Neil, not that we are pro ALP or pro Liberal Party in the Western Australia. We are at the moment, we're just pro shooters in the state, and the only way we can get rid of the bad laws, the bad firearms laws in Western Australia at the moment is to boot the anti-firearm government out, which happens to be the Labor Party.
Yep. There has been some commentary recently by someone who we'll talk about later on, who's actually dismissing the need for political action. But I'm afraid that's the primary goal here. We have to punish governments that are going to do us harm. There's no doubt about it. Now, before I get off this particular topic, because there's probably not much more to report on, the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party, they had a really good ballot position in the upper house, and they tanked.
Unfortunately, I believe they made a mistake in listing the party as SFFP initials only. It does, yes, the people involved in the party know what that means, but unless you have the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party on the actual ballot paper title, often people will miss or not even know who you're talking about.
It's worse than that. It was actually SFFPWA.
That's even worse. Yeah. So who the hell's that?
They actually, I think, came pretty much second last in the upper house statewide.
I heard that was the lowest vote for the Shooters and Fishers Party in Western Australia in 2 elections.
Right. Okay. Now, moving on, the rally. Now, I've already covered the gun rally that was held in February. You and I were talking about previous rallies from yesteryear, and we were talking about, I think a lot of the time frame that we were starting from was 1987, when there was a move to tighten or basically restrict semi-auto long arms following the Hoddle Street and Queen Street shootings, and the impact this had in New South Wales under Barry Unsworth.
Yeah, the Barry Unsworth government, yeah.
Do you want to just talk a bit about that?
Yeah. Also, there was obviously the shootings occurred. The horrible shootings occurred in Victoria, Hoddle Street, and also what was the shooting in New South Wales? Do you remember, Neil? The
There's one at Strathfield.
Strathfield, yeah, the Strathfield
Yeah.
massacre, and yeah, both of these were terrible shootings. The Victorian government at the time did restrict. It actually banned semi-auto firearms only to. It restricted them to basically Victorian Rifle Association shooters members. So basically, if you weren't a target shooter, you could no longer own a centerfire semi-automatic. They weren't completely banned, but you could still own them. And I still knew people who still had SLRs slash AR-15s for target rifle shooting at the time. The New South Wales, Barry Unsworth, the New South Wales government decided to go a lot further. We said they were going to go a lot further and ban a whole suite of firearms, not just semi-automatics, but he was really going to do. He was basically saying he was going to do a Western Australia.
Yeah.
So he was going to basically ban all sorts of stuff, including semi-automatic shotguns and rimfires across the board. And he was punished. Shooters got together, unlike anything I've ever seen in that election, and booted the Unsworth government completely out. And it wasn't. They even Barry Unsworth admitted that he made a mistake in saying that, and even admitted it was the shooters who booted him out of government.
Yep. So there was a big rally.
Yes.
As you said, as a result of the cooperation between organisations, which is what we need to see everywhere.
Yes, and then you fast forward to that was the 1988 election in New South Wales, and then fast forward on, unfortunately, to the terrible massacre in Tasmania in 1996. Now, obviously, these were going to be national laws then, or there was no such thing as national laws, but we had the NFA appear in 1996, where all states were meant to comply with the NFA, apart from our friends in WA, of course. Now, there was a massive rally, one of the biggest rallies I've ever seen in Melbourne, which myself and my brother attended. And were you there, Neil, that Saturday?
I was there. In fact, I heard that the crowds were still coming up from Flinders Street to
Yes.
they couldn't get to Spring Street for the rally. It was that big.
It was enormous. I mean, when my brother and I were up the front of the rally, fairly close to the front. Now, the main speaker of the rally, and the main organizer of the rally was a now deceased Victorian president of the SSAA, Ted Drain. Now, he organised all organisations, Field and Game, SSAA, Australian Deer Association, any organisation in Victoria at the time, all of them got together and said, no, we're going to fight this. We're going to hold a massive rally. And it was do you remember the headline in the Herald? I think it wasn't the Herald Sun back then. I think it was just called the Herald. The following Sunday, where it says 110,000 march in Melbourne. Do you remember that headline?
I remember the numbers being fudged.
Yes. Now, so on Sunday
downwards.
Yes, on Sunday it was 110,000 people marching in Melbourne, and the Herald reported on that. Even had photographs of the massive march. Now, by Wednesday, that had suddenly morphed to 20,000 people. We don't know how. I mean, magically they erased 80,000 people, but that's not the case. They just downplayed it. But at the time, that march, all the shooting organisations came together and held a massive march, to the point where Field and Game and other country Victorian associations, shooting organisations, the Victorian Rifle Association, and anyone else who involved in shooting, were literally providing buses, hundreds of buses, to bus people to the rally. And I've never seen anything like it.
You were telling me earlier that also Ted went off his head.
Yes. Now, Ted Drain, he he worked with the government at the time, exactly what Western Australia had been trying, the Western Australia SSAA and WAFCA have been trying to do with the government for the last 2 years with the new laws, the Western Australian laws. However, Ted Drain realised at that time in the March it was too late for political behind the scenes, so-called behind the scenes action. Ted Drain went right off and said, "No, shooters, we're going to stand up to this and fight." And he said, "This is the line in the sand. We're not going to let them win on this." And he had a magnificent. If you can, I'm not sure whether that's unfortunately iPhones and video cameras weren't a huge thing in those times. I'm not even sure if you can find his speech online, but it is in text if you can look around somewhere. But I'm not sure whether it was videoed.
Yeah. And look, the purpose of talking about this is obviously to contrast sort of what we've had in the past versus what we're seeing now. I appreciate that, the run up to these things is different. But we've got a whole generation of people, I think, shooters who I hadn't seen this happen and they hadn't actually experienced it. So we're just trying to, I think, relay really what the old school approach was in the old SSAA, as I call it, and old other organisations, and what we have today. And that's unfortunately, I think, a contributing factor to the result that we've seen in WA.
Yes. No, if SSAA WA branch had got behind the rally, in fact, they didn't. They did the opposite of getting behind the rally. They actively opposed their members going.
Yeah.
It could have been the same result. Yes, you might not have got 110,000 people like in Melbourne, because obviously more shooters in Melbourne than WA. But it would have been a lot larger than it was. But because SSAA Western Australia branch only opposed even their members going.
Joining our YouTube channel entitles you to see the episodes of Gun News Australia as soon as they come out. Plus, we'll be running Friday night live streams starting from April just for our members. So join up using the link in the description to this video. So the rally that was organised and held in February, it was still, I think, a very big, very successful event. It's just that it could have been bigger and was successful if others had have been on the same bus. One, I want to also just clarify some of the public commentary that has been held around the organisation of the rally, because there has been some misinformation put out there. So I will do that now. So as you be aware, Kate Fantanil has spoken about the fact that she was invited to be MC for the rally. She referred to a meeting on Boxing Day that was held, and all of those things are true. So there's not taking issue with her there. But a couple of things. The Boxing Day meeting was the first meeting. There were 8 people there, and she was obviously there too. It was really to scope out sort of what the rally could look like, how it could be organised. So really there really wasn't anything that had been prepared in terms of rules around it, except for one, that I wanted this rally to be just about guns. I did not want people to head off in other directions about COVID or about, I don't know, closing of national parks and those sort of things, or freedoms, because once you do that, you're going to dilute the crowd that could be attracted to the rally. It was going to be about guns, and I can understand the appeal of widening it, but we just keen to do that. I heard Kate say something to the effect that she was being asked to read from a script. That is incorrect. There was no script, but there was, as I said, a discussion around the scope of the rally. Nothing more. There was also commentary about an email circulation group that involved Western Australia Police. That is completely untrue. We had obtained a permit from Western Australia Police to hold the rally, but that was after the Boxing Day thing. That did not happen until about January, by recollection.
Yeah, well, obviously to hold a public rally in a public place, you need a permit from the police and the police permission to close. If there wasn't this case, it was in a park, so there was no roads closed. But often a rally involves a march, and there was no march in this rally. But you often need a permit to close a road and hold a rally.
Yeah, we needed a permit, and so there was discussion with WAPOL, but only on that issue, and that was, as I said, wasn't even at the time. So I just don't know what she's referring to. So I want to make that clear. And just on the rally, we after that meeting, we didn't really hear from her again. We had offered to pay for her flights and accommodation, and she decided what she did. You know, that's her call. So following the election, there was also a media release issued by Louise Kingston, who's the independent member for Southwest Region, as it was, and as you'd be aware that she was also at the rally, very pro-gun. After the election, she issued a media release which actually raised some interesting questions. Now, bear in mind, some of this I think we see at other elections where people say that, you know, there were ballot papers that weren't delivered on time. There might have been some incorrect voting instructions, but in the release, she says that the election was outsourced to a private company with known ties to the Labor Party, who made significant political donations to the party. This raises questions about conflicts of interest and the integrity of the process.
Yeah, that's not good. And I did see that reported in the media as well. That's not good.
No, Labor's using one of the donors to do all the paperwork for the election. Look, I don't know where it's going to go. It's not from. I mean, I'm sure there are things happening that we'll hear about in good time. But yeah, I just wanted to draw that out. So unfortunately, the election's over and done with, unless there's something else pops up. So the next one, our Western Australian colleagues, will be in 2029. So I guess in one of my sort of final things, I want to just call out Mark and Sam, who you'd be aware is a blogger. They've got a big following. They covered the election, and just after in fact, I think it was just immediately prior to the election, Mark actually gave Shooters Union Western Australia a big plug, really big pat on the back for organising the rally or holding the rally. And I encourage people to watch it, you know, if they want to. But he's also joined Shooters Union as a member, he and Sam. So I just I've been
watching Mark's videos on long range shooting for a couple of years now. He's really good.
Yeah, and he says, and I think it's quite right, the Shooters Union is the only group that he knows of that will fight for shooters, because that's what shooters need everywhere. All right, Sean Fraser, thank you very much again for your time today. It's been, I think, a whirlwind trip around a few topics, but it's, I think these are topics we had to cover.
Yep. Oh, you have a good Sunday, and myself and my daughter are out to fill up a ute to go to the tip.
No worry. Thank you very much. See you later.
See you then.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Gun News Australia. If you're a subscriber to our YouTube channel, you'll have access to every episode of Gun News Australia as it's scheduled to be published. But now you can also join the channel. Joining the channel means you'll get access to those episodes before they're published more widely. And you'll have access to our Friday night live streams, which are starting soon. So to find out more, select the join button on a YouTube channel or see the description in this episode for details.